I want to start with this because why not? Senator Chris Coons was on CNN a couple of days ago, and he was asked about USAID among its many, many, many other wasteful, fraudulent expenditures, apparently spending tens of millions of dollars in tax money funding a Sesame Street show in Iraq. And Coons was quite willing and eager to step up to the plate and go to bat for tax-funded Sesame Street in the Middle East. And here's what he said in defense of it.
Is funding Sesame Street a judicious use of soft power?
Well, Michael, the way you put it is the way I hope folks considering your poll today will think about it. This isn't just funding a kids show for children, millions of children in countries like Iraq. It's a show that helps teach values, helps teach public health, helps prevent kids from dying from dysentery and disease, and helps push values like collaboration, peacefulness, cooperation in a society where the alternative is ISIS, extremism, and terrorism. And to your point, it's pennies on the dollar. The U.S. Department of Defense has an annual budget of about $850 billion. USAID was spending about $30 billion. It is a small proportion of our total federal spending. And as Joe Nye would often say, it's not just soft power, it's smart power. Let me leave you with one other quote, Michael, if I could. Jim Mattis, who is a four-star Marine Corps general and Trump's Secretary of Defense in his first term, in a hearing back then said, if you slash development and aid spending, then I'm going to need more bullets for our troops.
Yes, you heard that correctly. Sesame Street was preventing people from joining ISIS. This was a national defense strategy, you see? It's for national security that we need to fund Sesame Street. We need, who needs a military, really, when you've got Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch? Chris Coons has a point. I mean, just think about how many times an Islamic militant was about to detonate his suicide vest, but then stopped and asked himself, what would Elmo do in this situation? And then he thought back to the Sesame Street episode where Bert was about to, become a suicide bomber, but then Elmo talked him out of it by giving a speech about friendship and cooperation. This is why we spent $20 million on Sesame Street in Iraq. And you hear about cases like this. I heard about this is actually a true story that I read about recently, where there was a Taliban warlord in Afghanistan who was about to execute a man for trimming his beard. And then he remembered a Sesame Street episode where Oscar the Grouch was about to behead someone until Grover came along and was like, Oscar, why are you being such a grouch? Why are you being so grouchy? Beheading someone. And then Oscar the Grouch thought better of it and didn't. And the Taliban warlord remembered that. And he still beheaded the guy, but he did it with a smile and he had fun. Well, and that's the most important thing, really. And these are the kinds of scenarios that a United States senator wants us to believe, I guess, are plausible. When, of course, in reality, I don't think it's too controversial to say that a kid who grows up in Iraq is, no matter how much Sesame Street they watch, is not going to have Western values. Okay, Sesame Street cannot, you've got the conditioning of the entire culture that the kid is living in, a culture that is rooted, in that area, going back centuries and centuries, thousands of years. I don't think Sesame Street is going to be enough to compete with that, I would say. And besides, all of that, even if it could somehow work, we should not be attempting to instill values in foreign people in foreign countries. And it is kind of amazing that here we are in the current year, 2025, and you still have politicians using this same line. It's the line that we heard all throughout, the early 2000s and beyond, to justify our many misadventures in the Middle East that cost us trillions of dollars. And the line was always, well, we're spreading our values. That's not our job. It's not our responsibility. It certainly is not the job of taxpayers to fund. Like, I actually don't really care what values somebody in Iraq has. That's their problem to figure out. I mean, they can have, they'll have their own values. They are their own culture. Which, that's always one of the many ironies of this sort of thing, is that the people who would tell you, like Chris Coons, right? The people who would tell you, well, we need to spread our values. We need to spend billions of dollars, right? Spreading our values across the world. The same people who would say that would also tell you that with a straight face, that all cultures are equal and that we're in no position to judge any other culture. And yet they want to spread our values. So which is it? If all cultures are equal and truth is relative and we all live our own truth and they're living their truth and we're living ours, then that would be all the more reason why are we trying to spread our values? That's just our truth, man. Now I have kind of the opposite view. I don't think that all cultures are equal, and I certainly don't think truth is relative or that we all have our own truth. I think that there are cultures that can be inferior to others in pretty much every measurable way, and also immeasurable ways. But at the same time, I don't think we should be in the business of spreading our values. Like, those two positions do not contradict. Like, I can look at the culture in Iraq and say, yeah, they got some serious problems, some serious cultural problems. So I can say that, but then also say, yeah, but we shouldn't be spending tens of millions of dollars funding Sesame Street to teach their kids Western values. So those two viewpoints do not clash. But the view that, hey, their culture is equal to ours, we're in no place to judge, their culture is just as valid, that view does not mesh at all with let's spend all this money to spread our values over there. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.